In just 90 days, I can help you validate your startup idea without having to first build or finish a working product. I've helped over 1,000 founders do exactly that using a simple, proven framework. And today I'm revealing the complete 90-day validation system that makes it possible. Now here's the truth. Most founders waste 6, 12, even 18 months building something nobody wants. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can prove demand before you build and start turning ideas into paying customers really fast. A typical founder in one of our coaching programs uses this framework to secure $5,000 to $10,000 of monthly recurring revenue before building anything. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to break down the exact 90-day system that makes this possible step by step. So stick with me until the end, and these might just be the most valuable 10 minutes of your startup journey. Hi there, if you're new to this channel, my name is Maurya. I'm an entrepreneur and author and the creator of the popular one-page business modeling tool, Lean Canvas, used by millions of founders around the world. I've also developed a systematic business model validation framework that's helped over 1,000 startups prove customer demand before building anything. So here's the expensive reality again. I see founders wasting months and burning through hundreds of thousands of dollars because they build first and validate later. Traditional startup advice says build an MVP and see what happens from there. That's backwards and expensive. Tesla got $50,000 deposits before building their first Roadster. Dropbox used a demo video to attract over 100,000 users before launching their product, and even a company like Apple, who is no longer a startup anymore by any measure, still uses pre-orders from demos to validate demand before investing millions in manufacturing. What I'm going to show you today is the exact 90-day validation framework that turns any startup idea into a demand-validated product before you overinvest. I'll walk you through the complete framework, and at the end, I'll show you how to get the guided implementation through our business model design challenge, where I personally walk founders through this process. So let me start by telling you about Steve's near disaster that this 90-day framework prevented. If you're a regular viewer, you've met Steve before. Steve had a grand virtual reality platform idea. He spent weeks writing a business plan which didn't get funded. He had mapped out 18 months of product development and set out to building it out on his own. That's when Mary introduced him to the systematic validation framework, and instead of building for 18 months and hoping, she had him prove demand in just 90 days using the exact framework we're about to get into. Using this framework, Steve got 12 out of 15 architects committed to paying $5,000 a month before he wrote a single line of code. That's an 80% conversion rate. This framework helped him sidestep the traditional validation trap, and here's why traditional build-first validation fails. Problem number one, you're validating the wrong thing. You build features and ask your customers, do you like this? But most customers don't yet know what they want, or more specifically, what they need to solve their problems. And it's easy to mistake their response for validation. Why does this happen? Because of problem number two. Building biases your validation. Once you've invested months building something, you're psychologically committed. You'll interpret weak signals as strong validation because you can't afford to be wrong. And finally, problem number three, time kills startups. When the time for an idea comes, there are often a dozen other founders in different parts of the world working on the exact same idea. The longer you take to validate, the more runway you burn, the more the pressure builds, and the less objective you become about real market signals. The 90-day validation framework flips this completely. You validate demand for your product before building anything, making decisions based on customer behavior, not just your assumptions. So here's exactly how the 90-day framework works. I've broken it down into 3 phases, 4 weeks each, and I'll walk you through what you're doing each week. Phase 1 is all about problem discovery. That's your first 4 weeks. In week 1, you're researching customer forces. What I mean by that is you're studying what your customers are actually using today, not what they say they want, but their actual current behavior. This is crucial because behavior reveals truth, opinions do not. In week 2, you run systematic customer interviews aiming for 10 to 15 of them. And here's the key. In these interviews, you use behavioral questions. Instead of asking, what's your biggest problem, you ask, walk me through your last experience with your current solution. You want them describing actions, not giving opinions. By week 3, you're mapping these insights into customer problem forces. You're looking at what pushes customers away from existing solutions and what would potentially pull them towards new alternatives like yours. Where are those moments of highest frustration? That's where you're going to find the opportunity to go after. Week 4 is where you validate that this problem is indeed real. You need to at least get 30% of your interviewees showing high problem intensity. People who are actively frustrated and looking for solutions or living with inefficient workarounds. This is how you systematically identify your primary early adopter segment. If you don't hit that threshold, the problem just isn't painful enough at this point to necessarily build a business around. In phase 2, we shift towards solution design. Those are weeks 5 through 8. In week 5, you develop your solution framework. And this is where most people go astray. You're not designing features, you're designing outcomes. You're, in other words, looking for the transformation you want to create in your customers with your solution. In week 6, you test your value proposition with the same people that you interviewed earlier. Does your proposed outcome actually resonate with the problem they experienced? This is where you find out if you really understood their pain points. Week 7 is about demo creation. Build the minimum demo needed to communicate your solution. This could be mockups, wireframes, a video demo, whatever shows the outcome most clearly and succinctly without overbuilding. Remember that you're not building the product at this stage, just demonstrating the concept. If you can get people to be interested by the concept, you're not going to have any different outcome much later once the product is actually built. Week 8 is where you validate the solution with fresh prospects. You show your demo and measure their engagement. Remember, we are measuring actions, not just words. Are they asking excited questions? Are they leaning in when you show them your demo? Are they asking you about pricing and release dates? Remember, you need at least 30% of the population at this point showing strong interest to validate for problem solution fit. Phase 3 is offer delivery. This is your final 4 weeks. In week 9, you design your complete offer. This isn't just your solution, it's how you package it with clear pricing and a delivery timeline. When done well, you end up creating what I call a mafia offer, which is an irresistible offer your customers cannot refuse because you nail their problem exactly. Week 10 is where you test this offer with qualified early adopters. And this is where the rubber actually hits the road. This is where you ask for meaningful commitment, not hypothetical interest, but actual money, time commitment, or other resources that are proxy for money. Week 11 is optimizing your offer. You're starting to now get real commitments from real customers, not I would buy this, but rather take my money now. There's a huge difference, of course, between those two statements. This is now where you further lean into your early adopter segmentation and continually optimize your offer for maximum conversion. Finally, in week 12, you analyze your demand validation. By the end of this whole process, it is not atypical to end up with 80% or higher commitment rate from your qualified early adopters. At this point, you have proven demand and it's time to start planning and building out your MVP. The beauty of this process is that you know exactly what to build. Your customers bought your demo and that's your product design spec. The other nice thing about this framework is that each phase builds on each other and validates the next one. Problem discovery validates into solution design. Solution design validates into offer delivery, and offer delivery into demand validation. You can't skip phases, but you can iterate quickly within each phase if something is not working. So let's now go back to Steve. Here's exactly how his 90-day validation worked using this framework. In phase 1, Steve interviewed 15 architects around their current 3D rendering process. He discovered the real problem wasn't rendering quality, it was revision speed and time delays during client decision-making. The key insight here was that these slow revision cycles were killing project profitability. So in phase 2, he designed a solution to this problem. Instead of positioning his product as a better 3D rendering tool, Steve decided to position his product around instant revisions even an architect could do during client meetings. He created mock-ups showing how architects could make real-time changes and win clients. He then reached out to a few friendly architects and demoed his concept. When they started asking him about pricing and release dates, he knew he was onto something. In phase 3 then, Steve offered his virtual reality platform with instant revisions at $5,000 a month with a 3-month pilot commitment. He presented it to 15 qualified prospects from earlier who had shown strong problem intensity. He got 12 of them to commit to start a paid pilot, which translates to an 80% validation rate. Now, before this process, Steve was trying to sell his platform to software developers at $50 a month, but simply by refocusing the same technology to a completely different market, Steve went from targeting $50 a month software developers to $5,000 a month architects. And the best part, of course, is that Steve had paying customers lined up before finishing his product. Now, if you do the math, he managed to secure $180,000 in customer revenues for a 90-day pilot. He was crystal clear at this point on exactly what to build next and use this revenue to bring on additional help to speed through his MVP build and start those paid pilots over the next 6 weeks. So that's the 90-day validation framework, and here's why it's so powerful. 1, it's based on behavior, not opinions. Each phase tests what customers actually do, their current behavior, their responses to demos, their willingness to commit resources. 2, it validates incrementally. You don't bet everything on one big assumption. You first validate the problem, which leads to the solution, then the offer in systematic progression. 3, it uses real market signals. Customer commitments are the ultimate validation. When people put money where their mouth is, you know the demand is real. 4, it prevents expensive mistakes. It's always better to learn your idea won't work in 90 days than 18 months. It's much better to pivot on customer behavior than your assumptions. All of this isn't just theory, it's the exact methodology I've used with over 1,000 startups and documented after years of testing and refinement. It's prevented millions in wasted startup resources. Now, what I've shown you here is the complete 90-day framework overview, but here's what I know after working with thousands of founders. There's a critical difference between understanding a framework and successfully implementing it. That's why I've created a systematic journey that takes you from idea to paying customers. It starts with a business model design challenge, which is a foundational program where you first master the 7 stress tests that bulletproof any business model. You build systematic variants to find your strongest idea. You create a personalized 90-day validation roadmap and then use that to develop the systematic thinking for testing your idea. Think of it this way. You wouldn't start building a skyscraper without architectural blueprints, and the BMD challenge creates those blueprints for your specific idea and business model. Then with roadmap in hand, you're ready for the demand validation playbook, the full 90-day implementation you just saw Steve complete. Phase 1 includes problem discovery with proven interview scripts. Phase 2 is solution design with demo frameworks. And Phase 3 is offer delivery with Maurya offer conversion templates. The Business Model Design Challenge is where we start every founder, and new cohorts begin every Monday. We limit each cohort to ensure everyone gets proper implementation support, and once you complete it, you can then unlock the full demand validation implementation. Now, if this is right for you, click the description below to secure your spot in the next BMD challenge starting next Monday. And if you're not ready to commit to the full program yet, you can always start with the free 7-day email course to get the core mindsets and concepts first. Next week, I'm going to show you why your biggest strength might actually be your biggest weakness and how turning constraints into advantages can unlock exponential growth. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.